Greetings, nerds. This is Cena Nerd. I'm your host, Sarah Belmont, and with me, as always, is our Mr. Producer, Will Polk. How are you doing tonight, Will?
Doing very well. Sarah, how are you doing this Thursday evening?
I'm doing good. I'm
That's
very
good.
excited tonight. Very excited. And I'm so excited that I'm like, okay, let's just get to the news so that we can touch on some other things later on in
Yeah.
the show. And speaking about the news, to kick off, you started a new little show, your
Yeah.
Star Trek show.
Yeah. I started a Star Trek show. From Star Trek Picard, got pretty good both on our main show here and also I started doing solo reviews of deep dive into the episode this past season of Picard and realized I was like, I like talking Treks and so you and I talked and you gave me your blessing, like go forth, go nerd out on Star Trek. And so so here on our feed, I'll start doing a little show called Blerd Trek. Had a little soft launch earlier this week. It was the Cisco Day, which was commemorating Captain Benjamin Sisko from Deep Space Nine. It was a brand new thing that one of the actors from the show and some other folks started to recognize the day that Sisko became the emissary. And for folks who watched DS9, they know what that means. And it was, so I was like, oh, let me just, do a soft launch this week with that. And then, of course, this week we got so I just put it up and haven't done a trailer review for the Strange New Worlds, but also in the little soft launch of the little Star Trek pod. Talked about some of the things that is coming up with Strange New Worlds Season 2, which starts June 15th, which I will be doing. I do plan on doing recaps for that as well. So if any folks who are Star Trek fans want to check it out, I haven't decided how often I'll be dropping it until Strange New Worlds runs, but I'll probably do another episode or two before June 15, and then I'll be doing the weekly recaps with that and more.
Yeah, you gotta almost find a rhythm with it because this is the first time like it's just you solo, so I can only imagine the difference it is, but I'm very excited for you and I'm very glad you're doing this because I know how passionate you are about this. And I think our listeners can hear it too whenever you talk Star Trek, even to me, who is always like, okay, you're not selling me, but okay, I'm here for it. I mean, don't get me wrong. No, go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was going to say, if folks could like hear our chats beforehand, if we ever decided to go into K-pop, you would, with the passion I have for Star Trek, if we ever did a K-pop segment on here on the main show, they would hear the passion that you have for that. So I'm sure you can recognize that.
Feel so outed, but don't worry. Later on the show, you'll definitely hear some passion I have for trash reality television. So more on that in a bit. But over the weekend, you did watch, and this is so funny. We don't plan things like this clearly because you let me know that you watched the movie Air. Now, pre you letting me know that, I swear to God, Will, Sunday mid-morning, I was like, you know what? I see that it's free to watch Air on Prime Amazon, so I'm going to put that on. However, I was there, I was ready, and then my mind just went elsewhere. And so about an hour and a half in, I'm like, I have no idea what's going on. I think I've paid attention to 5 minutes of this movie. I've just been doing other stuff. So I'm just going to turn it off. I've heard really good things about it. For some reason, I thought I was in the mood to sit down and watch a movie, and I clearly wasn't.
Yeah. I totally hear you on that. I mean, that was me with the Diplomat recently, where I was really like in like a started the first episode and I went back, then I was going to start watching another one, and then I ended up just like sitting on Twitter and doing other things. So totally get it, but that's funny that this is unplanned, y'all. I had just it was Saturday night, and I was like, I've been hearing great things about Air.
Mm-hmm.
And which for folks who haven't heard about this movie, it's the story of how Nike was able to sign the deal with Michael Jordan and the creation of the whole Air brand in Nike. And so it's Ben Affleck plays Phil Knight, who is the president and CEO of Nike. Matt Damon's in it. He plays Sonny Vaccaro, who is actually was a basketball savant, big marketing genius, and it really explores the story about how Nike, Adidas, and Converse were really in the early '80s were really fighting out the basketball market, and really exploring how Mike basically signed with Nike, and I do think they tried to stay pretty true to life. I mean, of course, obviously with these kind of things, they do take dramatic license with things, but it definitely was it's a short movie too. It's only like an hour and a half, which I think it actually benefits it, because I think if it had gone much longer, it probably would have been too long. But I have to say, I think Ben Affleck, I don't know if he directed it or not, or I think he might have.
I
but it was,
feel like he did too for some reason.
Yeah, I can't remember right off the top of my head, but I think he did direct this, and it was I really, really did enjoy it. I mean, Jason Bateman's also in it. Chris Tucker.
Yeah, he did. He wrote it. Or, I mean, he directed it. He didn't write it.
Yeah. So yeah. So like I said, I think if you're a fan of Michael Jordan, and Sarah and I both talked about the Last Dance, I guess during about a year or so ago, that was the documentary that
Chicago Bulls.
Yeah, covered the Bulls with that last run, the championship run. So yeah, I was going to restart that again after watching this film, because it got me inspired.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like last summer I was thinking to myself, and I'm like, man, I wish something would come out like The Last Dance, which is, I mean, that came out. Well, I think it came out on ESPN, and then later on it came out on Netflix.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was during the pandemic. Yeah.
Yeah, and so people would be talking about it, but not everybody could access it. And then once it hit Netflix, it was must see. And I think I watched it like twice as soon as I could, because it's such a good documentary. And but I can absolutely understand how watching a movie that features Michael Jordan and a story about him would be like, oh man, I got to go back to Last Dance, because that doesn't focus on him entirely. I was surprised by how much each episode focused on an individual team member. But then at the same time, it was always in conjunction to what was going on with him. And then, anyways, a great documentary, good movie. Check out if you haven't watched it.
Yeah, definitely. And if you're expecting, I mean, Mike, the actor who they got to play Mike, it really is about the circumstances surrounding Mike.
Yeah, it's not about Michael Jordan necessarily.
Yeah. So it is about Michael, but it really is like you were saying with The Last Dance. It does focus more on the people surrounding it, and really like Dolores. I mean, Viola Davis, I think, played his mom, Dolores Jordan.
Yep.
And she was just phenomenal as well. And I will say with seeing James Jordan, his father, and just knowing what happens, with his father being murdered later. I mean, there were a lot of things there, a lot of emotions whenever knowing that story, and especially, living here in North Carolina and remembering all of that, what transpired with that. Like I said, the air is phenomenal. Definitely, like we were just talking, definitely wants me to go watch Last Dance again. So if you're a fan of that, and before check it out.
All right. Speaking about being fans of things, we did, as many of you know, we have been catching up on The Flash, the final season, the final run, if you will.
Yep.
And last night they did air the series finale. The run is over. He finished. And we both watched it. Oh my. Okay. Okay. So it reminded me so much of the conversation we had a few weeks ago about finales.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, and when we were talking about it, we were talking about Picard and what was the other one? Mandalorian. And this one from the get-go I'm like, oh, you went this route with it. I see you. The first 20 minutes is all like, ooh, super big fight. And then the last 30 minutes.
You want to call it that?
Yeah, it was like not one big fight. It was some small, ridiculous fights spread out against like, hey, let's bring back all of these characters. You know why? You know why, Will? Because we do that on The Flash. We bring back characters. Death has no meaning.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there. I just couldn't help it.
No worries. Absolutely interrupt me because death has no meaning on this show to the point where 35 minutes in, 40 minutes in, when all of a sudden Caitlin comes. I had to send you a chat message and be like, Will, I'm watching this. I am watching this, and Caitlin is back. I didn't watch the episode in which she quote unquote died. And then we've been dealing with not Caitlin, but not Caitlin left, and now Caitlin's back. Wow.
Yeah. I do want you to go back to your point with finales, because I know we were just talking about it, and I do want to hear your thoughts on that.
What?
That's as far as like where you were going with finales. Because you were saying how we watched Picard, we watched Mandalorian, and then.
Oh yeah, it's no. I thought I did finish that point.
Oh, okay.
I was saying about how the structure of it I could see through because they chose to do the typical, arguably a season finale structure in which you spend the first 20 minutes because you already had your prelude executed in the penultimate episode. So you spend your first 20 minutes with the quote unquote showdown, and then leaving plenty of room for an epilogue, plenty of room to being like, oh, and now everything is fine, and then possible tease for the next, which maybe that's also why this did not hit as a series finale, is because the structure down to the last moment where I don't even understand it, but he spreads the lightning around the earth. It's such a season ending format.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, and I think that, so I basically like put it out there last night after watching the episode. I didn't want to make a snap reaction. I needed to sit with it. And I know prior to us recording tonight, we talked about this show, and, quite frank, while we're still sitting here 7 years later, it's because of the Flash. I mean, I learned about Cena Nerd through your podcast, and at that point, you were also, I think, writing stories for the blog that the show had at the time. So that's how we met, and so so it's in our DNA as far as our first foray into podcasting. So so I'll always have my memories of that show is intertwined with the friends like I made like with you and some of the listeners, through that show.
Right.
So so there, so and I think that's, even though we dropped it after I think season 7 or 8, where we were just like, oh my god. And this finale really reminded me why we stepped away from it, to be honest.
And then some.
Yeah, because it was. I will say that the very very to your point about epilogues, the very very end where we do see Barry after Nora's born, and we see him running on Ferris, and and we get the modified opening speech that we got from the opening of the series, as far as the impossible speech and all that. That was really the only time watching the finale where I did have an emotional response of like, wow, this is where I had that that vibe of like, especially thinking back at I started thinking about like all the discussions I had with you, and I remember like for example season 3 where I think that was our first real season where we really, that's when we started potting together, and thinking about how we had the Saboteur tournament. If you remember
Yeah.
that, yeah, and so that and just some of the core, things, just, the live tweeting and folks and stuff. That was that moment, that was where I had my emotional, like, got a little lump in my throat. And it was really thinking about all the things surrounding the show more so than the show itself. Um, because honestly, I thought the finale was mid otherwise.
Oh yeah. The finale didn't work. I mean, it just, I wasn't surprised by
Yeah, I
how
wasn't
the
either.
shows ended. It stayed the course of the few episodes I watched of the season. I'm like, that about matches everything they've done so far. So I'm not shocked by any of it. But you are right that part of the reason why a lot of us went back or you want to watch it is because of the earlier seasons and the community that was built around it. And the same can be said for Arrow, because when that show ended, I also was like really let down. I have like very similar thoughts about both shows. Both shows had very strong starts, very
Mm-hmm.
weak finishes. And I fell off the last season of Arrow, just like I fell off with The Flash. I fell off a bit earlier on The Flash, but yeah, they also had some showrunner issues, in my
Yeah,
opinion.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
it is. I'm glad that they did wrap it up the way they wanted to. You know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, and I'm looking forward to the Grant Gustin interview with Michael Rosenbaum, where he breaks down how angry he is about how the show went. And we hear all the horror stories. The infamous Stephen Amell interview callback.
Yeah.
But yeah, so um, on
Yeah.
that note, oh, go ahead.
Yeah. And I do want, I mean, like I said, the community aspect of it definitely, I think, color, is a big part of it. And one of the reasons why I did, whenever we got to April and we got the last 4 episodes, wanted to like go back and close it out. And there weren't like, and let me just be clear. I mean, even though I said, I did give one area where I did feel, um, where things did work. The other, I mean, I don't want to like spend the whole my point here, bashing things, because overall, I'm gonna look at the arc as a 4 episode arc, and and I remember us talking when we got episode 10, part 1 of the final 4, and how both, I think we both agreed that episode worked like a series finale.
Mm-hmm.
Because you had the final showdown with Thawne, and everything that they had set up in that episode and executed in that episode, where it did get those first season vibes again, as far as what made the show special. And it was like they did manage to capture that again, even though it got, of course, undercut again by the secondary characters that no one cared about. So, if I were, and I know I had shared today a story where Grant, Eric Wallace, and Todd Helbing, the showrunner for seasons 2 through 5, all had their alternate endings of where they would have gone, and I think we got sort of, Grant had an idea, Todd, of course, they had the idea of like the crisis ending. We had sort of a modified version of Barry seeding, being the lightning, and I think the prevailing theory, I think everybody was really hoping that Barry was what did the loop, and he, like Oliver suggested, that the lightning, Barry was himself, and he kind of took that sort of approach, except with the finale. Except here, of course, they had Barry open the Speed Force to other people, which I did like that, because that was the one good thing Eric Wallace did there, to keep it from like becoming like too much like Star Wars and the Skywalkers, where
Mm-hmm.
where it's only the only one line of people. So I did like that. I do. The 3 characters that they picked are all, well, Max Mercury is one that was deep from the comics, and one character I was hoping we would have seen years earlier. But I think they, especially with the introduction of Impulse, but they didn't go that route. I mean, Jay sort of took on the role that Max took with Impulse in the comics. And then of course Avery Ho was introduced last season, and she's been in the comic as well. And then Jess Chambers is different from Jesse Quick that we saw earlier in the series. This Jess Chambers is a new character that's been introduced recently in the comics. So I did like that. That was another aspect I did like of the finale. The setup for the villains all coming back was great, but the execution and all, as we both, God, they nerfed him. But anyway.
Yeah, I honestly have said my thoughts about this show. So, may it rest in peace. Anything else before we head over to Smallville?
No, I mean, I could go further. But it would be more of what I've sort of complained about and why we moved on from this show. But other than that, we did want to give some of our listeners, especially folks who've been with us for a long time, did send to our socials whenever I posted, asking what their favorite aspects of the show. So let's end it on a high note with that, because we all love the show, but at the same time we all know it has issues. But this here for some of our listeners, Tara on our Facebook group said, enjoy seeing Barry and Iris get rid of the book and feature events. It was fun seeing them enjoy life most of the time. Jeff Lewis, and Jeff actually joined us to talk about the Flash here on the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
One of our favorite aspects was when Barry and Eobard recently did the Speed Force lightsaber fight. Sarah Holiday, who's another listener, had several favorite moments. Barry and Iris got stuck in the time loop when they woke up. It was a fun one. Barry did the Flash thing with Captain Boomerang. The crossover with Oliver, any crossover with Oliver was always great. Grumpy Old Bruce, absolute favorite, all of season 1, which I think we've all agreed with that. Everything seasons 2 and 3. And then can't comment since Caitlin died, or Frost died. And yeah, and then on our let's see, Mikey Flash, who does our theme. Love season 1, perfect executed. Like the world building season 2. And then one of our Instagram folks, Lily Miranda, the backdoor pirate first time seeing Barry wore a suit that Cisco made for him. Which, yeah, I do want to raise that point before we move on. All the crossovers, the West Island, they thought the good always outweigh the bad or the ridiculous. So just wanted to, some folks did take the time to share their thoughts with the show. So I wanted to do the courtesy and thank them for giving their thoughts. And I will say, I know I wanted to end on a high note, but I think the other thing that made this thing so hollow was that didn't figure out a way that they should have paid the man with Carlos. I know Carlos was trying to say scheduling. So maybe they just couldn't pay. They didn't want to pay him for what he probably wanted to come back now. But
yeah, they honestly
yeah.
didn't need to, because they have 14 other people to fill in that void. But
yeah, the Caitlin Barry moment just did, again, like I said, it rang hollow for me because he wasn't there. And that I know they were trying to do the emotional beats, but a lot of those things where they were trying to elicit emotion didn't. But I will say that the close out the Flash, the finale, seeing Barry run down the street, did bring very good memories back for me. And as I stated before, I think it was as much about the community that was built up around the show than what we were seeing on the screen.
yeah, definitely. All right, so that takes us to Smallville, where both of us had kind of thought for some weird reason, that they were taking more than a 1 week break. So when it returned this week, we were kind of like, oh, okay, we'll talk about it. This episode, we're talking pre-show, and you were saying you alluded to your thoughts, and my thoughts. It's just hard with any breaks. I mean, we've been spoiled a lot lately with streaming content being very consecutive, week after week, no breaks. And so it's always a rude awakening when you're watching a CW show and they take breaks left and right, and you just lose a bit of momentum. But anyway, so this picks up right where they left off, where essentially we have John Henry, who's holding Mannheim's wife hostage at the DOD. And while they're trying to figure out a case, which is interesting because they didn't really do much casework. They mainly spent, like, the Clark and Lois line was all about the dress. But anyways, I'm doing a horrible job summarizing this. So, Will, what are your thoughts on this week's episode of Superman and Lois?
Yeah. So Superman and Lois, so the contrast for me this week, where I was, had a lot of anticipation for one show, and then, like you said, the infamous CW breaks messing up the flow of another excellent show overall right now, and Superman and Lois, and this episode this week reminded me why I still rock with this show so much, and why if it doesn't get renewed on the CW, I really hope they pick it up on HBO Max, at least to give them the opportunity to close out the series properly instead of leaving it on a cliffhanger. Which, I mean, given that there's only 13 episodes this season, and next week will be episode 10. It would be criminal, because what this show did, it was very deep, but it was very, like, it really highlighted the heart of this show, which we've talked about before, is the relationship between Clark and Lois. and the depth of their love for one another, their respect for one another. And it was on full display from the moment they had the flashback to when Lois was nominated for the journalism award and Clark selling his baseball cards, his prize collection, to because they were still dating at that point, and I think they were
No,
engaged, but
they were engaged.
they were engaged, yeah, but just really, he did that to get that dress, and then how they interwove that theme of the dress, and then with the battle that Lois has been fighting all season, where sometimes, there was the action adventure fight too with John Henry and Henry Miller, and Superman and Miller. But really, it was about the bigger fight that they're dealing with this season, and it really interwove all that very, very beautifully as far as what they've been dealing with, and Lois and Clark's love for one another, and how it's impacting both of them. From Lois, getting good news about the chemo working, but then on the other hand, she's having to have a double mastectomy, and Clark dealing with that as far as his feelings. On the one hand, he's trying to be a supportive husband, missing, they're missing the physical.
Okay, wait.
Yeah,
I just want to chime in here because I feel like he was oblivious. He didn't really understand the dress.
I was about situation.
To go there. Yeah. Like I hear what you're saying in terms of how I'm just dead inside because I don't know. This didn't elicit for me. Oh, these two, they're so in love. I don't know why. It's not like it didn't elicit the opposite where, man, these two characters are not on the same page. I just felt like the writers decided because they really wanted after the events of the previous episode for John Henry to take this very aggressive approach with Mannheim. They had to put Superman and Lois kind of on the back burner and be like, this is no longer your fight. This is John Henry's fight. So you guys are going to be caught up in memory lane for a little bit. Meanwhile, Clark is also dealing with the whole morality that's at play that they kind of started. But maybe it's because maybe this episode didn't work for me because I still remember the previous episode and how many issues I had with especially Clark's, oh, we have to take Mannheim down. Oh, wait, his wife is dying. You already knew that. And you wanted to go after him. And then suddenly now, the moment she almost dies trying to almost kill John Henry, that's when you're like, you're a good person. I don't understand that. And so I guess my point of why I don't think it worked for me is because there was so much momentum with the John Henry and Mannheim situation that to me it just felt like, and we're going to go back to Cancer Story for a little bit. I'm like, really?
Yeah.
You're going to do that now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I hear
Things aren't going on. You got your sons running around with Nat, who's affiliated with the Mannheims. You don't think those two idiots are going to do something stupid? I was so thinking in my mind, oh man, they're going to take Nat to meet what's his name? Mateo. And Mannheim's going to totally like, I was just waiting for it because Clark and Lois are just in La La Land. Lois has a valid reason though. She's doing chemo. Her head is messed up. Clark, you have no excuse.
Yeah. Well, Clark So there's a couple things to unpack there because I see where I get where I do agree with you to some degree about the shift. And and I think what I was going to say was, and I agree with you too. First of all, your point about Clark being oblivious, spot on. I mean, he was, and as far as like, and I'm glad, and I think this is where Lana does play a very good role in this show, to like, help him be that like, yeah, okay, I got this. Clueless dude, I got this. But also to Clark's credit, what I was going to say with the love and support was more. It was just it was a good. It was more just how he was very clear that it was Lois's body, Lois's choice. Not it's not me as a dude trying to like tell you how to like manage your body basically. And so and maybe it was just some of the things in the environment these days kind of like maybe color my perception with that in a good way. It was a good way to hear a man say that as a man I'm not going to tell a woman what to do with her body. I mean that's
Yeah.
maybe that
It was
that
very
was where I was
politically
coming from.
correct. It was a very politically correct
Yeah so
for
I
him
think
to
that,
do that. Yeah.
yeah so I think that was one of the things where I was maybe my filter was why it was working for me there. But I do agree, but I do agree with you that given what all they had set up between John Henry and Clark, and in particular their conflict, as far as how to deal with Mannheim, it was kind of like whoa, it's like snap my head here, especially because now Clark's like trying to be and I guess this is the greatest thing about Superman too is like he's a very empathetic person. So like you said, on the one hand you're like we got to get Mannheim, but then we do this 180 like no, we got to let Mannheim see his wife because they Pia may die here and we got to be good and that kind of stuff. So I get where you're coming from on that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean they're doing a good job with the dilemmas.
Hmm.
Very good job between Mannheim, with John Henry, and with Clark. They kind of have they've had I think they've had a bit of a rough go with John Henry the most, just because I mean he turned real fast. He killed a guy. Okay, let's just talk about it.
Yeah.
What do you think do you think there's going to be a consequence for this? Because literally everyone in Smallville apparently was on that street at the exact same time and saw him literally kill someone in cold blood.
Yeah.
So
Well, well,
do you think the writers is there going to be a consequence? That's my question.
yeah. So I the premise that it was cold blood. I don't think it was cold blood. I mean, he was defending himself.
Okay.
Uh,
Okay, it was a defensive. He killed a person while defending himself. What
yeah.
is the way they executed in the fact
Yeah.
that I just keep hearing, I think it was Jordan who's told
Mm.
Lois and Clark and said, John Henry just killed a man in Town
Yeah.
Square. Um,
Yeah.
do you think that is a hint that there will be a repercussion?
I think there will be a repercussion, maybe not from a criminal law standpoint, as far as him getting charged with murder or anything like that. No, I
Hmm.
don't think there'll be that. Um, but I do think the relationship with Nat, his relationship with Clark, definitely there'll definitely be some repercussions there because it was very clear at the end of the episode, Clark was just like, I am not down with that.
Right.
You could have, I mean, because clearly if Superman wanted to kill Henry Miller, he could have done it many times over.
Oh yeah. He could even
And
kill Mannheim if he wants to. He's not
yeah,
going
yeah, I
to
mean,
because he
he's
thinks
not
that
going
he's
to.
a great guy.
Yeah, and yeah, and I mean, and and that's I mean, to get not to pull Zack Snyder and Man of Steel into it, but That Superman, anytime he uses his power, he could easily just today, fuck it. I'm just gonna I'm gonna be Omni Man and from Invincible and just take everybody out, or
Yeah.
Homelander.
Yeah.
But he always keeps it in check, and I think that's where he was like, "Look, John, yeah, you had the ability with the Warhammer to do it, but you could have just incapacitated this man because he's as much a victim of Mannheim as you are."
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Because he
yeah.
just I mean, Mannheim
It
keeps
was a
reanimating this guy.
pretty serious fight.
Yeah, it was a
Yeah.
pretty serious fight, but Mannheim keeps reanimating Henry Miller for these experiments. I mean, how many
Yeah.
times has they? Yeah,
No, I hear your point. It's a very fair
yeah,
point. Um, it's something that did bother me is well, Clark is like, guys, we can't just keep her in the DOD. What was the DOD's like legal plan here?
yeah,
We're just gonna hold this dying woman hostage. I
yeah.
mean, I don't know about you, but I don't remember there being a lot of civilians on the street that night where she almost killed John Henry and
No,
Superman.
no.
So I just I don't
But she
really
did kill
understand.
the mayor of Smallville,
Yeah, yeah,
the
she
former
did.
mayor.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
and she's
it's
been
just,
and I guess
well, I
I guess
mean,
her fights.
any proof that I mean, I like how in the previous episode there was this big thing about Lois getting the files and then they finding out that, oh, they put Lex in jail. Was that talked about at all during this episode? No.
No, no.
I was like,
we we're,
really?
we're putting a pin in that for the finale, and then we'll never get resolution because CW is going to cancel the show.
Oh no, I have a feeling, like most CW shows, they knew they were on the bubble, so
Yeah,
they went into it, writing it as if
yeah, true.
writing it to tie up all loose ends from this season. Now they
Yeah,
might hint at something that could have been for season 4. Um, Still don't know about that, but yeah, I don't think there's going to be a major clip. I think this arc will definitely come to a close, with
yeah.
Mannheim and John
Oh yeah,
Henry.
Yeah, I completely agree with you there. Also, to your point about Lex, I
Yeah.
think that's the cliffhanger I'm worried about. The Mannheim story, yeah, they're
Well,
going to resolve this.
yeah, but we've seen Lex so many times in so many iterations, but it'd be cool to see what this show would do with that character. Yeah,
Hmm.
but at the same time, we're gonna get Lex half a dozen times within the next 12 years or
Oh
so.
yeah, yeah.
I'm
It could
I
be Yeah, it
Yeah,
could be Nicholas. It could be Nicholas Holt, but
yeah.
yeah.
All right. Anything
Um,
else?
no, I mean, I know you touched on the kids and all. I think this week you, they had the brothers like come back together and gave Sarah uh, a chance to be the match, to be the mender. I will say the art, the sort of Jonathan and Nat sort of back and forth with their calling each other out on hypocrisy. There was it was a good it was a good little reminder of sort of what the teens are dealing with, and so it worked. Like I said, for me, this episode really worked for me this week. I see your point though, how with the tonal shifts, with what they set up prior to the break, and then coming back to one where it was a true like kind of love letter for Lois and Clark, would be kind of disconcerting because especially given that it was coming off a break and and it was such a some of the bigger issues that they were dealing with the fallout from Pia being discovered, and then dealing with that was that definitely was kind of a shift that was hard, maybe hard, hard to get back on
It was
into.
just a noticeable shift for their
Yeah,
storyline, for the
yeah,
the two central lead storyline,
yeah,
especially with everything that transpired. But at the same time, it wasn't too noticeable where like it was as if they were on a completely different show.
right, yeah,
So it makes sense. I just would have preferred, okay, we could have followed up with more of like Lois suddenly being back in investigator
yeah,
mode, but now we're dealing with, oh, you're about to have your breast removed. Great. You're like,
yeah,
okay,
yeah.
that's a weird kind of, I thought we were over that hump, but I guess not. So anyways, we will be continuing this discussion next week, and for the rest of the season. And on that note, for all of you nerds, if you don't want to hear about reality television show, then have a good night, because me and Will, we're about to do it, because Will made my day. He made my day when he told me that he did not just watch the reunion episode of the 10th season of Vanderpump Rules, but he watched the season finale
Yep.
and potentially a little bit more.
I'm working on it, but yeah, I did, even to the point. Yeah, you missed. Yeah, it was so funny. So Sunday afternoon, I am watching TV and just kind of scanning through, and then I see on Bravo that they're doing the replay of the season 10 finale of Vanderpump Rules. So I obviously turn it on. And I actually take a picture of my TV as I'm watching it and send it to Sarah. To say, hey, I was like, hey, check this out. I can't remember what I said, but or it may have just been the screenshot of, because at that point it was when Tom had his hands in his face.
Yeah. It's
And
you, I think you said it's happening. It
it's
happened.
happened. Yeah, it happened. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
That's
okay. I need to, so take me back to
mm,
watching the finale of a
yeah.
season you have not watched.
No.
And I've told you bits and pieces about what
Yeah.
happened,
Yeah.
but what were your thoughts, and like what was
Oh,
going through in your
uh,
mind?
so hats off to you, first of all,
Mhm.
for being a wonderful storyteller, because I was, as soon as I like dropped into it, because I had missed like the first maybe 10 minutes, but or however many minutes, but uh, I was able to just like fall right in, and I was just
Yeah.
like, holy shit, this is. I can't wait for it. And then the commercial break came, and it was like the reunion, and I like sent you another message like, "Oh, the reunion's on Wednesday," and you're like, "Yep."
Yep. Yep. Yes, sir.
I was just like, "Wow, I gotta." Yeah, I got to. I was like, 45 minutes later or whatever. I was just like, "Yeah, I can see why this show is so good. I can see why this show. I'm like, I felt, I was like, I have FOMO no more. I am. I feel like I got some homework to do, in a good way, and that it really, I see why it became such. I mean, it's always been like, as I noted before, I think when we talked about it here on the pod,
Uh-huh.
um, how I used to see it trending on social media, on you know Bravo nights, and when during the week and all. But I could see, but I could see why the Scandival was like a top trend every week.
Oh yeah.
Um, and why, and all the things that have come from it, from the
So
Tom and Steve's the restaurant, like, how with people writing stuff on the mirror, as far
yeah.
as you know, with the cheating and all. And we could, I don't, yeah, it really like, I was like, yeah, you know, I could see,
So
you know, yeah.
so why though? Why do you think? Because the show honestly, and a lot of the people, cast members have said the last two seasons ratings have gone down. It hasn't
Mhm.
been as good. Like the true high was a good season 3, season 2, season 4. Um, and then this happens. So what about this scandal
That's
do you think led others, not even people who have been watching the show, but others be like, "Whoa, what happened?" And we can watch
people,
it?
yeah, people love a good scandal.
Oh
And
yeah.
this has, it has everything that you want. I mean, as far as like, you know, you have this group of people
Hmm.
who are, you know, who you have Lisa Vanderpump, who is like a you know, mentor, you know, helps all these people out with their businesses, and you know, and you have all these people who, you know, who have relationships with one another. You know, you've had people who are married and separated. You've had people who
Yes.
who hooked up with one another, and it's like all the like the perfect mix, and they're all like all their personalities are such that they're it's like the train wreck of like humanity.
Yeah. It is. It
That's
is.
so that like, you know, and why these shows like Vanderpump and The Bachelor and all the, you know, these unscripted shows work
Yes.
is because it works because, you know, it was like the perfect thing for me when you know, I has never watched an episode before.
Right.
But it was like a Sunday afternoon. I just was kind of chilling, you know, thinking about trying, you know, it's like had a big week ahead, but it just takes you out of that for a minute. And just like when you think like, man, I got so many messed up things going on in my life, but then you see that train wreck and you're like, you know what?
Yes.
My life is
Yes.
not, my life is not as fucked up as these people.
Oh my God, that is so true. That is exactly why it's this weird, it's reality television. And yet, in my mind, I'm like, but such an escape from reality because you're just
Yeah.
like, real people do this.
Yeah.
And so, okay, so that was the first episode you watched. Did you
Yeah.
watch anything else before Wednesday with the
No,
finale or with,
no.
sorry, the reunion? No.
The reunion,
So
no, no.
what? Okay, this reunion, I knew I had heard because I had listened to, I think it was Sheena's podcast where she and Lala were debriefing about their reunion, and Lala admitted she came in very aggressive, but not
Mhm.
as aggressive as James. But
Ooh, no.
yeah,
Ooh, yeah.
my God, what were your thoughts about this reunion?
So to repeat what I started from the beginning, how excellent a storyteller you are, and how you beautifully set it up for me with these reunion shows. You know, it filled in the gaps very
Yes,
well with
yes,
all like the history. So I'm like, oh, okay. So Sarah, I remember Sarah talking about this a couple weeks ago about, you know, the incident that happened in 2014 or whatever.
right,
You know, and so you know, so for a guy like me who's just parachuting into this show,
right.
you know, Andy Cohen, hats off to him and the producers and the folks who do these reunion shows, because they, you know, clearly deal with the issue at hand. But
Hmm.
then, like as I was saying before, all these people work together, have podcasts together. I mean, there's a whole like, speaking of communities built up around a show, there's communities within the show, communities of listeners and watchers of their shows and their podcasts and stuff. And so for me coming into this, I was like, okay, this is totally accessible. I
Yes.
didn't
Yeah.
feel, I didn't feel like you were saying, like, to get back to some of our discussions earlier this year, like Star Trek, for example, 50
Yeah.
years worth of legacy that you've got to, like, if you're trying to come into this, oh, it's daunting. This, I could walk right in. I'm like, okay, I may not know chapter and verse for everything, but I'm down with it. I got to know what's I got in that hour watching that reunion show last night. I was like, okay, yeah, I can pretty much, I see where, I learned a lot about all these people's relationships and, that, who was it?
You got the
Confused me.
highlights.
Yeah, I got the highlights, and it had made for very compelling television. When with the whole scandal all sort of unfolding, and poor Raquel, like, this restraining order, like having to watch it from the trailer in the parking lot.
Oh, that
Uh,
she enforced?
yeah,
Yeah, that Raquel. Do not, I'm sorry, you said poor Raquel. Raquel filed the restraining order so
yeah,
that she could not have to sit through 7 hours on stage with Ariana.
yeah, yeah.
It
Well,
was a
maybe not.
tactical move.
Yeah,
And why I say that is because we all know that Sheena went to court that day, and
hmm,
you know who didn't go to court? Raquel,
Raquel.
because
Yeah,
it was total BS.
yeah,
She didn't. She didn't. She
yeah.
might have like I've heard all of the evidence that says there's no way she punched her. Did
Hmm,
she shove her? Yes.
yeah,
But
yeah,
she didn't actually punch her, and it's just, yeah, I don't it I have no sympathy for Raquel, because it bothers me that you're going to sit here and say I'm taking accountability for everything I did, but I
mhm,
also want to like reduce the number of people who are going to yell at me by
yeah,
strategically doing this. And it's like,
yeah,
okay, way to take
yeah.
accountability.
Yeah, true, true. I mean, that is a good point, because I mean, what? Yeah, I guess poor Raquel. I mean, it was more, like I said, that's where my not knowing all the history there. I mean, I gathered enough that I was kind of like, you know,
These
I
people are
was,
fucked up.
yeah, I was like sitting there like, all right, she's sitting in this trailer,
Yeah.
and and she's, the thing that was like running through my head was like, was the sex worth it?
Yeah.
Was
My God.
I mean, is this guy? I mean, yeah, I mean, really, was he, is he all that? I mean, because I'm looking at Tom, I'm like, all right, he's kind of a handsome dude and stuff, but,
Hmm.
and even with some of the other folks, but I'm like, is it? I mean, really, is this worth it?
Well, think about the
And
season
also how
finale.
incestuous these people are too, because it seems like everyone's has slept with everyone else. I'm like,
Yeah,
dang,
well, I mean, and you're not familiar with Mr. Jax Taylor, where there was
yeah,
at one point where pretty much all the female cast members had slept with him. So, yeah.
yeah,
Anyway, my what I wanted to say though is when you asked the question, was the sex worth it? All I can do is think about what she was talking about during the season finale, and how
mhm,
she she even questions him in that freaking awkward as fuck scene
yeah, yeah,
where he
yeah,
visits her, and she says, how, like, I can't even trust you because
yeah.
I mean, you love the, and I'm so sick of him using the word I love Ariana. It's like, no, you don't.
Yep. No, you
You know,
don't. No,
you
you
don't
don't.
understand what that means. You really
No.
don't.
You
But
love the idea of being in love with her, but you
mhm,
don't love her. I say he
right,
loves the idea of being in love with her, but he does not love her.
right. And Rachel, I'm sorry, that's her real name, loves
Yeah.
the idea that now people are paying attention to her.
Hmm.
And I mean, another cringe moment that
Yeah.
like blew my mind. Why would you even say this? Like, do you hear yourself talking? And I'm talking about Rachel, but when she said in her the interview, when she said, I just wanted to know what it felt like to have sex with someone that I loved. And I'm
Hmm.
like, so you
Yeah.
love him
Right. But he,
knowing that he is saying I love you to another woman who he's been saying that to for 9 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as much as like I can understand why you would be attracted to Tom. What
Mhm.
I don't understand though is what she did to Ariana, because I can already tell you what she's gonna use as her justification. He told me that they were in an open relationship. Okay,
Yep.
so he tells you that. Then why don't you go to her and say, "Hey, your boyfriend told me this." No, you're not. You had 7 months.
Yeah. Yep.
You're like, oh, we're gonna keep this a secret. Like, yeah, red
Yeah.
flag. It's just, oh my God. I'm dying for her to be on stage because I just want her to be like ridiculed to no end. But I also, having heard the cast members come out of the reunion, I
Mhm.
kind of know what to expect.
Yeah. Yeah.
However, they are
Because Reunion was
teasing.
filmed in it was filmed in March, right?
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
only filmed like 3 weeks after they picked up cameras again to film the now season finale.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it was filmed like March 23rd or something.
Okay.
Um, but the main producer of the show has teased in an interview with someone who has been long time writing about the show and did a whole expose about Scandival. They teased that yeah, there's something very significant related to the scandal that will be revealed in the last episode. And
Mm.
it's so telling that it's part of the reason why we've decided to start filming for the next season a bit later than usual, because everyone after that was said just needs a break.
Oh wow.
And so now
Yeah.
everyone who's a fan of the show is just speculating.
Hmm.
And my thought, Will, you don't even have to ask me for my thought. I've thought about this a lot. I
Yeah.
truly think it's going to come out. It was longer than 7 months. I think they hooked up when she was engaged with James. And if that's
Ooh.
revealed, oh my God.
Ooh boy. Yeah. Just from a little I saw last night with the reunion show. Yeah. That. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, he's
Yeah.
moved on,
Yeah.
but like the hypocrisy and the lying, it's like really this has been going on that much longer.
Hmm.
But I don't know. I could be stretching because that's even more messed up. Um yeah, on
Yeah.
so many levels, but anyways. So, well, we will resume this discussion because they got
Yes.
2 more episodes.
Yes, we will.
Um, I heard that it is totally worth it if you have Peacock to check out the unedited reunion episodes on Peacock.
Hmm.
I think they've done actually the entire 10th season unedited on Peacock exclusively. And then also they are promoting a after show with former cast members Jax Taylor and Brittany. So
Huh.
I've
Yeah.
seen clips of it on TikTok, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah, and I know. I think I sent to you earlier today too. Like, I know Variety is. I think Pete Bravo is like really pushing this season for your consideration for Emmy. Consider potential Emmy nominations in the TV category as well. So to your point, I was thinking about that while we were discussing the show, and you were mentioning how the ratings have rebounded from them being down
Mhm.
to the point where it may dethrone RuPaul.
Oh, it like I think celebrities are watching it. I think it's going to be a strong contender for an Emmy.
Yeah.
The editing is back to what it was in the heyday that is season 2, season 3. The way
Mm.
they edited the finale, it was perfect because it felt like a documentary. was like, on this day, this happened.
Yeah.
This is what we could collect. And honestly, because so much was learned after the fact, that they had to like go to cast members and say, hey, we know you filmed this vlog. Can we have some of that footage?
Yeah.
I kid you not.
Yeah.
And then they incorporated because it showed, like, I don't know how to emphasize this more. These people are actually friends in real life.
Mhm.
So as much as people may go on and be like, oh, this is totally scripted, I really, I don't think it's as scripted as you want to think it is. Because I think in a way you want to think people are not capable of this. Oh,
Right.
yes, they are.
It's,
And that
yeah.
is what's fascinating about it, is because it's actually caught on footage of how
Yeah. Yeah.
despicable humans can be.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're right, because I was listening to David Sampson, who he was on Survivor. He was
Hmm.
the for folks who watch that show, and baseball fans are probably familiar with him. He used to be the manager, the general manager of the Florida Marlins baseball team. But I was listening to this podcast this morning, and he was just talking about how Survivor, I guess it just ended his 44th season, and he was talking about his experiences on that show, and how unscripted it is. I mean, and that, you know, it really, like, people. The only thing that they had off camera that you just didn't see maybe was like the suntan lotion, because just to make sure you get sunburn in Fiji. But beyond that, everything else, no food. It was what you saw was what you got. So to that point about, another well-known reality TV show, not being a scripted thing.
Right.
To your point about, what we're seeing here with Vanderpump, it may be some selective, maybe some, like you said, the editing, hypes up some of the things, but the story, it is what it is.
Oh, yeah. It's
Yeah.
editing definitely makes it more dramatic,
Yeah.
for sure. All right. On that note, Will, why don't you tell our listeners where they can find you?
Yes, you can find me, and tell me your thoughts on the Flash now that I have given my thoughts, after not doing the snap reaction last night. But you can find me on Twitter at Will M Polk, WILLMPOLK.
And you can find me at SJ Belmont, SJBELMONT. Please follow our crew on Twitter at Scene and Nerd, friend us on Facebook, and follow us on Instagram, and visit our website, www.sceneandnerdpodcast.com. But most importantly, rate, follow, and comment on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you hear podcasts. Good night, Geek Out. You're welcome.